Before dawn in August 1944, the quiet coves of Provence held a secret more decisive than the surf that lapped their pebbled shores. The Allied command had chosen this coast for a second shock to the Axis system, a southern door that would swing open while Normandy still thundered. What looked like a picturesque ribbon of beaches concealed a plan to split German lines in France, seize deep-water ports, and pour men and fuel into the campaign that would end the war in Western Europe. Strategists weighed risks against hard logistics. Northern supply routes were choking on distance and wrecked railways. Marseille and Toulon, if taken quickly, promised vast quays, cranes, and warehouses ready to feed entire armies. Intelligence from the French resistance mapped roadblocks, garrisons, and telephone exchanges. Ultra-decrypts traced the thinning German reserves and their reliance on long, exposed routes over the Rhone. Air reconnaissance added mosaics of sandbars, tide, and fields behind the littoral. The equation pointed south. The terrain persuaded as much as any staff study. The beaches near St. Raphael and St. Tropez were broken by rocky points and small valleys, less fortified than the Atlantic Wall. Offshore approaches were broad enough for convoys, yet close to airfields in Corsica and Sardinia that could fly round-the-clock cover. Naval planners measured gradients for landing craft and flagged hidden reefs. Engineers rehearsed signals with colored panels and smoke, committing every cue to muscle memory. Veterans later remembered the taste of salt and diesel as LST ramps clanged and held their breath against the smell of cordite drifting from pre-landing bombardments. Riflemen described how the Mediterranean light rose from violet to steel blue while they checked toggles on assault vests and traced grease pencil marks on maps that named beaches by letters and colors instead of towns. A radio operator recalled counting seconds between naval salvos and the answering pop of German mortars, learning the rhythm in which men could cross open sand. Allied leadership sought more than a diversion. The aim was to unhinge the German 19th Army, force a retreat up the Rhone, and meet the northern armies somewhere near Dijon, compressing the enemy into a shrinking corridor. Airborne troops would seize road junctions in the hills, harass withdrawals, and steer armor toward river crossings. French fighters of the interior would cut wires, drop trees, and guide columns through villages where lanes twisted like capillaries. The choice of Provence also served a political promise. Re-entering southern France with strong French forces signaled the restoration of national authority, and it gave the campaign a momentum that could not be achieved by northern thrusts alone. On staff tables, the plan balanced firepower and tempo. Naval gun lines would smash fixed strongpoints, engineers would breach wire and concrete, and the first waves would expand beachheads not by spectacular charges, but by methodical clearing. The southern coast offered exactly that kind of fight, where discipline and coordination could matter more than brute attrition. By choosing Provence, the Allies chose speed, supply, and the chance to make the enemy run rather than die in place. As the sky brightened, the decision resolved into movement. H hour neared, signal flags lifted, and the horizon crowded with silhouettes. The second D-Day was not an echo, but a pivot. In the weeks to come, the captured ports would unload mountains of material, the Rhone Valley would become a conduit of retreat and pursuit, and the Allied front would knit together from two directions. The war in France was about to accelerate because the Allies had chosen the right coast at the right time. Mediterranean summer light hides a larger game. While convoys form in Naples and Taranto, the real work begins far from the future beaches of Provence. Staff officers spread a map of the entire inland sea and mark false trails. Wireless operators key out scripted traffic that suggests a thrust toward Genoa and the Ligurian coast. Old landing craft are towed in circles off Sardinia and Corsica, their silhouettes counted by watchers on enemy headlands. On quiet coves near Bastia, carpenters hammer together dummy ramps and canvas vehicles. The signal is confusion. A French resistance courier remembers the assignment clearly. He carries messages that hint at landings near Nice and Ventimiglia, then hands them over where the enemy is known to listen. He later says that the most dangerous thing he did was to walk slowly and look unconcerned. A United States Navy signalman recalls nights spent laying practice beach markers on empty sand and packing them up again before dawn, leaving only tracks and a whisper of activity. He says the surf smelled of fuel and rope, and that every movement felt like rehearsal for a scene the audience was not supposed to see. In the air, reconnaissance flights are patterned to draw eyes away from St. Raphael and St. Tropez. Fighters linger over the wrong base. Bombers probe batteries on the Italian coast, as if clearing a path for an armada that will not come. Minesweepers work in obvious lanes, then break off and vanish. A decoy flotilla drifts where the enemy coastal network can count masts and sketch false intentions. A German coastal artillery sergeant later describes a week of alarms. Orders shift daily. One day his section hauls ammunition north towards San Remo. The next day, it returns to Toulon. Convoys pass at night, headlights blacked out, and rumors grow. He remembers the sense of a hand drawing patterns on a fogged window, too quick to follow. He notices that supply dumps never quite align with the threats reported by patrol boats. The pattern he sees is a pattern designed to mislead. In the Allied rear, deception teams manage double agents who report what the script demands. Harbors are staged with scaffolds that look like loading cranes. Signal lamps blink at rehearsed hours. The French interior forces add their own smoke, quiet sabotage that forces the enemy to guard bridges nowhere near the true approach. Every hour tied to the wrong objective is an hour gifted to the real one. By early August, the mask has settled. Enemy reserves are thinned across a broad arc, watchful but misplaced. The beaches that matter are surveyed at night by men who speak little and write in grease pencil on waterproof boards. Tide tables are checked, sand samples bottled and tagged. When the assault convoys finally move, they pass through a Mediterranean crowded with echoes. The ruse has done its work. Guns, fuel, and attention are pointed the other way. At dawn, the horizon opens and the deception falls silent, replaced by the blunt truth of landing craft riding the swell toward Provence. They called it the Southern Army, but on paper it was the hard edge of a coalition built to move fast. 7th Army under Lieutenant General Alexander Patch drew its striking power from 6th Corps, commanded by Major General Lucian Truscott. 3 veteran American divisions formed the Assault Trident. The 3rd Infantry Division under Major General John W. O'Daniel, the 36th Infantry Division under Major General Johnny Dahlquist, and the 45th Infantry Division under Major General William W. Eagles. Each brought shore parties, engineers, medics, tank and tank destroyer battalions, and naval beach groups drilled to thread steel through surf and sand. Above and behind them waited the Airborne Task Force led by Major General Robert T. Frederick. American parachute regiments and glider infantry stood alongside the British 2nd Independent Parachute Brigade, tasked to seize road nets, high ground, and bridge sites before dawn. Veterans remembered the long briefing tents, the smell of canvas and engine oil, the chalk numbers on fuselages, and the weight of silk harness against the ribs while maps of Provence lay pinned with colored grease pencil. French strength did not arrive as an afterthought. General Jean de Lattre de Tassigny's army be assembled to follow fast once the beaches opened. North African tirailleurs, Moroccan gummiers trained for broken country, armored columns, and colonial divisions gave the plan political muscle and mountain craft. Older FFI hands, some still wearing civilian jackets over captured webbing, had marked culverts and telephone poles with secret signs. Their notes passed into Allied briefcases, and their local guides stood ready to lead columns off the sand. Seaborne delivery belonged to Admiral Henry Kent Hewitt's Western Naval Task Force, a layered screen of destroyers, cruisers, gunfire support ships, LSTs, LCTs, and control craft. Sailors later recalled practicing semaphore in cramped mess decks and painting giant beach identifiers on canvas panels that would flutter in the August wind. Combat engineers rehearsed with Bangalore sections and dozer tanks. Naval beach battalions memorized traffic plans down to the minute. It looked clean in the orders. In the veterans' memories, it was a living machine. A radio net that could flex when a landing craft broached, a column that could change lanes when a vineyard wall blocked the track, a parachute brigade that could find a crossroads by the smell of dust and pine. When H-hour came, the roster became motion. Infantry out of the surf, pathfinders at the hedgerows, French columns nosing inland, a corps and an army stitched together by voices on the air, pushing Provence open for the drive to the Rhone. Dark before dawn, the coast of Provence is a chain of low bluffs and coves cut with concrete teeth. German engineers call them resistance nests, numbered boxes on fire plans that overlap with cold precision. Each nest has its heartbeat. An MG-34 or MG-42 behind a slit, a 50mm or 75mm gun covering a beach exit, a handful of riflemen with Panzerfaust waiting for silhouettes against surf. Mines seam the sand, teller plates wired to stakes, and tangled steel lies just under the wash where an assault boat will grind. The strongpoints look fierce, but the garrison is threadbare. Many bunkers hold older men, convalescents, and foreign auxiliaries led by a few hard sergeants. Ammunition is rationed. Field telephones crackle and die when the salt air climbs. Inland, reserves are promises on maps. A battalion is motorized only on paper. A staff car and a few trucks spread across 3 companies. The nearest armor sits far up the Rhone, fuel locked in depots that will not be reached once Allied aircraft wake. When German officers rehearse counterattack, they trace arrows that depend on bridges, radios, and daylight they no longer control. Veterans who faced those positions remember the contradictions. A naval coxswain later recalled how tracers stitched the foam in perfect lines and then went silent as a bunker crew hesitated under the shock of naval shells. An infantry sergeant remembered the smell of wet powder in a captured casemate and the scattered labels on ammunition boxes from factories across occupied Europe. A combat engineer described crawling through wire that was more rust than steel, cutting lanes that matched aerial photos to the meter because the Germans had built by the book and the book could be read from the sky. The strongpoints were not isolated islands. They spoke to one another with pre-planned fires, yet the net frayed everywhere. French partisans cut telephone poles in the hills. Airborne pathfinders seized road junctions so that any reserve would have to fight twice before reaching the beach. By first light, Allied fighter-bombers prowled at treetop height, and every staff ride became a gamble. A reserve platoon that dared to move found its lead truck burning in a vineyard and the rest of the men scattered in ditches, pinned by the hiss of rockets that seemed to arrive from nowhere. When the first assault waves came, the German plans still functioned in fragments. A machine gun could break a boat. A single-pack gun could stop a tank at an exit lane. But without depth in fuel and radios, the wall could only cut and never counter. By midday, many nests fought alone, commanders gone, ammunition low, sandbags torn open for the last magazines. The southern wall had sharp edges. It did not have a spine. The wind over Provence is warm and restless as the transports begin their run toward the hills inland from the beaches. Inside each C-47, jumpmasters check straps by touch, counting heartbeats in the dark. The Pathfinder beacons are supposed to be burning on the plains near Lemuy, but the crews know flak and haze can turn neat plans into a scatter across vineyards and stone walls. Midnight slides across the valleys. The light of the Riviera is offset by the heavy silence of the high ground where the night fight will be decided. The green light snaps on. Men step into the slipstream and fall into black air. Canopies flower. Many drift wide, landing in orchards, ditches, and dry riverbeds. A radio operator gathers his bundle, hears a nearby skirmish, and crawls toward it guided by muzzle flashes. Small groups form by instinct. A corporal from the 517th calls for direction, and a French farmer points with his whole arm toward the ridge that commands the road to the coast. The ridge is the key. Hold it, and the German columns will stall at dawn. They move along hedgerows, bayonets fixed for balance as much as for shock. A bazooka team hauls the tube like a sacred burden. Mortarmen count their rounds, saving smoke for the hour before sunrise. A British platoon from the 2nd Parachute Brigade materializes from the olive trees, inked dark berets under their helmets, and together they climb. On the slope, trip flares spit cold light. A machine gun opens from a low stone terrace. Paratroopers flatten, then peel left and right. Grenades arc. When the echoes fade, the terrace is theirs. By 2 in the morning, the screen begins to knit together. Roadblocks are thrown up with felled trees and commandeered wagons. Engineers seed the approaches with hasty minds. A medic kneels by a wounded private and remembers later that the cicadas were louder than the gunfire. A jeep from a glider unit rattles in, its driver grinning through dust and fear, and the heavy machine gun on the pintle settles to cover the curve of the road. Dawn lifts, thin and gray. Through the mist, the first enemy trucks feel forward, unaware that the high ground now belongs to the airborne. A rocket from the bazooka slams the lead engine. The column lurches to a halt. Rifles and Brownings hammer. German infantry spill out and try to work the ditches, but the paratroopers hold the ridgeline, radios crackling back to the fleet and to the beaches. By full light, the roads to the coast are choked and the way for the seaborne forces open. The night work is done, precise, improvised, and paid for in sweat and blood. The night finally thins to gray and the Mediterranean looks like hammered lead. Landing craft ride the swell in tight lines, bows square to a coastline still cloaked in smoke from the destroyers. A coxswain checks his luminous dial one last time, calls steady, and the throttle surges. H-hour. Ramps are about to fall. In the first rank, the infantry crouch behind steel plates that rattle with every slap of water. Some men taste salt and diesel on the back of the tongue. Some count the rounds in the top clip by touch. Assault vests are heavy with grenades and wire cutters. Beach markers wait ahead, simple colored panels laid by scouts during the dark hours. The plan is brutally simple. Find the right color. Drive for it. Break through the strongpoints fast. Naval gunfire hammers a final minute of covering fire. The horizon flickers. Shoreline shapes resolve into low dunes, stone blockhouses, and the jagged silhouettes of wrecked stakes. Resistance is uneven. Some sections are quiet save for a few bursts that stitch the water. Others light up with tracer that schemes flat across the swash. Veterans remember the sound most of all. A tearing canvas sound when a machine gun tracks. A deep drum when a heavy piece speaks from a headland. Ramps crash into surf, and men surge forward knee-deep, then waist-deep, rifles held chest-high. Engineers move first, carrying satchels that leak the sharp smell of explosive. They feel for tripwires with their boots, place charges against steel doors, and wave the rifle squads past gaps they open with seconds to spare. Dozer tanks nose down the ramp of a larger ship, stall for a breath in the surf, then claw forward and shove wire and stakes into heaps the width of a truck. On the left, a platoon finds a shallow gully that leads behind a casemate. They crawl in pairs, mud on faces, counting to 5 before each move. Inside the blockhouse, the gun crew is already shaken by the concussion of near misses. A Bangalore tube thumps, a door caves, and the lane off the beach grows by another 10 yards. On the right, French fighters of the interior guide a squad along a vineyard wall, whispering about a field of mines they marked at night with stones turned pale side up. Across the sand, stretcher teams work without pause. Corpsmen chalk times on helmet rims to track morphine. Smoke pots burn to screen the next wave. Behind the first shingle, the company forms again, breathless, half-deaf, pushing inland along lanes traced on waterproof maps. The beach is no longer the objective. It is a line left behind. The first wave has done its job. The road to the ports must open before the sun climbs too high. On the narrow strip of sand between St. Raphael and St. Tropez, the assault stalls under the rattle of machine guns. Concrete boxes stare down the water, slit lamps of fire that rake the tide line. The first waves have marked the beach with colored panels and smoke, but the lanes are still choked by wire, mines, and steel teeth. Engineers step off with coil packs and Bangalore sections balanced on their shoulders. Every foot of ground is a calculation of weight, breath, and blast. A coxswain drops his ramp into knee-deep surf, and men spill forward under a wind that smells of cordite and salt. One private from the 36th Division will later recall counting the teeth of his saw because it kept his hands from shaking while he screwed the fuses into the torpedo joints. The sections slide beneath the wire. Bodies press flat into the sand. A hand signal. The line buckles. The beach lifts in a stuttering roar. Gaps open, jagged and smoking, only wide enough for a man to crawl, then a squad, then a stretcher. Dozer tanks nose in like patient animals. A Sherman with a blade shoves aside hedgehogs, stalls, backs, takes another bite. The driver cannot see more than a slit of dust and sparks, but the blade rises and the obstacle goes, tumbling like driftwood. Behind him, a D7 claws a path for the next wave of LCVPs, engines screaming against the weight of wet sand. The lane tape goes down. Guides kneel with paddles. Everyone is counting minutes because the tide and the enemy will steal them. Assault teams trained in ranger tactics hook left to take the nearest strongpoint from its blind side. A flamethrower team advances by bounds, 2 breaths at a time. An engineer sergeant palms a satchel charge, waits for the long burst to end, and runs the last 6 meters along a shallow trench filled with casings. The satchel lands against the embrasure. The wall shrugs and then slumps. Inside, stunned defenders stumble back from a room already filling with smoke and sand dust. Scattered voices on the radio net call for more Bangalores, for stretcher bearers, for a marker panel to guide in a misrouted LST. A signalman taps out a correction for the naval guns, shifting the barrage 20 yards inland to peel the next nest. By late morning, the lanes are deep enough for jeeps and stretcher teams. A water canteen passes down a file of men black with smoke. Someone laughs once, short and unbelieving. The beach that resisted at dawn now feeds a river of men and steel. Obstacles lie pushed into awkward piles. In the dunes, a sapper writes the hour in pencil on a mine he has just lifted, because every neutralized thing must be accounted for. Forward of the shingle, the first culvert is cleared, the first crossroads is taken, and the inland guns that made the surf dance are finally silent. The sand is already scored with tire ruts when the first LST noses in, ballast tanks flooding, bow doors grinding open into the swell. There is no grand view, only a rectangle of daylight beyond steel, a ramp thudding down onto wet gravel between St. Raphael and St. Tropez. Naval Beach Battalion men run first, unrolling colored panels and staking lettered signs that turn chaos into lanes. A tethered balloon tugs at its cable above the surf, a marker against smoke and dust. Coxswains steer toward those panels because the panels mean depth, gradient, and a way out. The Mediterranean is kind, but the shore is not. There are scabbed patches of stakes, wire, and mines where German strongpoints covered the approaches. Engineers mark safe corridors with white tape and painted arrows while a bulldozer coughs through the surf and shoves a berm into a road. Behind it, the first jeeps and dukus crab sideways across the ramp, engines high, salt water hissing off hot manifolds. A loadmaster uses arm signals like a conductor, counting seconds between swells, refusing to let a truck bog down. If one sticks, everything stops, so nothing must stick. The soundtrack is practical. Whistles, hand clackers, a burst from a gun far up the dunes, the slap of stretchers on sand. Navy corpsmen and Army medics slide along the flagged lane that runs opposite the vehicle flow. They cut boots, tape compresses, and pin used morphine syrettes to field jackets for the next team to read. Plasma bottles hang from rifle slings tied to the ridge tent poles. There is a chalkboard by the casualty collection point that lists time of day, category, destination. The numbers change as the tide of men changes. Veterans remembered small things that decided minutes. A shore party chief who kept a pocket level to test the ramp angle. A signalman who learned the faint throb of a shaft at half a head by laying a palm on the bulkhead. A medic who laid helmets in a row to keep a litter level on shifting stones. These details are not romance. They are the difference between a clean unload and a pileup in the surf. By mid-morning, more LSTs shoulder in and then back out on kedge anchors, leaving fresh tracks like signatures across the bottom. The markers multiply, the lanes stretch inland, and the sand becomes a living map. Vehicles stream forward toward the Rhone. The wounded stream backward to the ships that brought the invasion, now turned into floating wards. On the sand, order grows from noise, and the beach becomes a machine that breathes in steel and breathes out momentum. FFI cells come alive in the dark hours before August 15, 1944. On farm tables between St. Raphael and St. Tropez, hand-drawn maps are weighed down with stones and spent cartridges. Runners carry last messages to cut rails, mine culverts, and sever telephone trunks that feed the German 19th Army. In the Massif de Moors, maquisards move in dispersed pairs, smelling resin and dust, counting paces to a culvert they measured weeks earlier. A shaped charge kisses the steel, and the Cannes to Toulon line folds into itself. Far off, naval guns begin to crawl across the horizon. At first light, guides step into the open. Armbands appear from rolled sleeves. A baker in Lemuy leads a path through orchards toward a sunken lane that bypasses a barricaded crossroads. An old forester meets paratroopers from the 1st Airborne Task Force, palms rough with pitch, pointing with a pruning knife at a dry creek bed that avoids a mined field. A teenage cyclist coasts past a German roadblock, counting helmets and the angle of the MG barrel, then whispers the numbers to an American captain crouched behind a stone wall. Sabotage buys minutes, and minutes become miles. A veteran from the VAR recalls how they dragged trees across Route Nationale 7 during the night, then daubed the road with white chalk arrows that sent a German convoy into a dead end beneath a retaining wall already wired by sappers. When the column tried to reverse, rifle fire cracked from terraces above and the first vehicle burned slow, black smoke pooling under the morning sun. The surviving trucks abandoned the route, and the coastal battery they were meant to reinforce never received its ammunition. Local intelligence sharpens every Allied move. Farm diaries note which bridges the occupiers strengthened, which fields were salted with S-mines, where a gendarme saw a staff car at dusk. A former FFI radio operator remembers keying bursts to an OSS set hidden in a wine cave, relaying grid squares for naval fire onto a flak position behind St. Agulf. Within an hour, the sand there is cratered and the beach markers shine brighter to landing coxswains. By midday, LST ramps bite the shore and infantry spill forward following chalked arrows left by FFI scouts. A schoolteacher with a captured field phone directs a platoon through vineyards toward a German strongpoint that looks intact but is hollowed by the night raids. The defenders fire, then falter. A tricolor appears in an upstairs window. Behind the line of advance, FFI roadblocks multiply, bridges are held for armor, and stragglers from the 242nd Division are stripped of maps and sent to the rear. What began as whispers and wire cutters becomes corridors for an army. Engines rattled and dust hung over the province roads as armored columns rolled off the beaches and turned north toward the Rhone. Maps were folded on tank turrets, grease pencil lines running through St. Raphael, Draguignan, and up the spine of Route Nationale 7. The order was simple and ruthless in its clarity. Find the retreating German 19th Army, cut the road, and keep moving. By the second day, the first fuel dumps were already behind us. Drivers stacked jerrycans along the sponsons and learned the rhythm of leapfrogging resupply. Engineers rode the bumpers, ready to clear charges from culverts and lay treadway when a span was gone. A veteran from the 3rd Infantry Division later recalled the glare of the August sun off the river and the way the vineyards flashed by as half-tracks surged from hamlet to hamlet, every crossroads a possible ambush. French forces of the interior appeared like signposts that could shoot. They waved us to farm lanes that cut hours from the march, pointed out bypasses around felled trees, and marked where German rearguards had mined orchard walls. At noon, P-47s stitched the road beyond the next bend, and the column paused just long enough for dust to settle before the lead tank pushed on. Radio nets chattered with reports of bridges on the Durance and the Drôme, some blown, some miraculously intact because FFI teams had pulled fuses or removed primer cord in the night. Task Force Butler knifed ahead, a moving knot of armor, cavalry, artillery, and scouts. The mission was the choke point at Montelimar, the place where the valley narrows and the road and rail squeeze between ridges. Veterans remembered the sudden shift from pursuit to a knife fight. 11 Panzer showed its teeth. Shells licked the slopes. Gun sections unlimbered in walnut groves. Tank destroyers nosed into firing positions behind stone walls and waited for silhouettes against the river glare. For days the battle seesawed. Ammunition ran tight and rations thinner, but every hour brought new units up the valley. An old sergeant from the 36th Division kept a tally in a pocket notebook, bridges crossed, prisoners herded to the rear, guns knocked out near Allen. He wrote later that the valley had a sound, a constant rumble of engines, tracks, and the clink of track pins cooling at dusk. When Toulon and Marseille fell, fuel and shells began to flow like a second river. The columns lengthened and the gaps between roadblocks closed. By the end of August, the 19th Army was bleeding out along the Rhone, and the arrows on the situation maps reached past Lyon toward the frontier. What remained was momentum, won in the heat on those narrow roads, where every kilometer was argued with steel and decided by men who refused to lift a boot from the accelerator. Dawn lifts over shattered quays, and the fight turns inward. After the landings in Provence, the French push on the ports is relentless. Streets in Toulon and Marseille are narrow canyons of stone where every doorway hides a rifle, and every crossroads can become a killing ground. Naval guns have silenced some coastal batteries, but many German strongpoints remain stitched into warehouses, dry docks, and old forts. Infantry advances a building at a time. Engineers blow rat holes through shared walls to avoid the open streets. Shermans nose forward as mobile cover, turrets slewing toward attic loopholes. A medic counts heartbeats in a stairwell before sprinting to the next doorway. The smell is salt, brick dust, cordite, and hot oil from wrecked trams. Fire teams call for smoke and push across boulevards where tram rails spark under tracked steel. French regulars fight beside local resistance groups who know every alley. A resistance guide taps a map with a grease-stained finger and points to a service tunnel that bypasses a blocked avenue. A veteran terrier later recalled the strange quiet before each rush, the scrape of boots on grit, the thud of grenades rolling under handcarts, the moment a hidden machine gun finally goes still. Another soldier remembered how civilians appeared between volleys to drag hoses across burning courtyards and press canteens into shaking hands. Counterattacks come hard. German detachments strike from cul-de-sacs and slip away through courtyards linked by laundry lines. Snipers work from bell towers until tanks punch holes through nave walls to cut their escapes. At the old forts above the harbor, mortars walk down slopes and assault groups climb under the arcs of their own bursts. By late day, surrender flags freckle the skyline, then vanish as new pockets stiffen. The battle turns on logistics as much as courage. Engineers clear mines from quays, while riflemen still fight a block away. Tugs nose burning hulks from the basins. Signals teams lash field telephones to dock bollards to coordinate final assaults. When a gatehouse falls, the harbor breathes again. The next morning cranes turn and cables sing. Within days the garrisons crumble. Columns of prisoners shuffle past stacked crates where the first Allied convoys begin to unload. The road north is waiting, but the men pause at the waterline. They have traded beaches for streets and won both. The port's live, and with them the campaign. Dawn fades into a hard ledger of outcomes. Along the beaches of Provence, the first tally is human. Medics move among torn sand where the surf still carries oil and splinters of wood. Riflemen sit with thousand-yard stares while engineers stack captured mines like dull gray fruit. Veterans of the first waves later recall the odd quiet that follows an assault, the way every sound registers again. Gulls, surf, a canteen cap snapping shut. Unit clerks begin their rolls. 4-6 Corps the opening day costs are measured in the low thousands killed and wounded, heavy enough to mark the price, light enough to prove the plan sound against a thin but stubborn German crust. By the second sunset the beachhead is a machine. LSTs open their steel jaws and disgorge trucks, dozers, cranes. Colored panels ripple in the sea wind to guide traffic. Beachmasters curse and point and sort, and the backlog shrinks. Veterans remember the relief of fresh water and rations that arrive without drama, proof that the Mediterranean deception and months of training have given the assault room to breathe. Results sharpen inland. Paratroopers and commandos hand off roadblocks to infantry, then pivot to hunt pockets of resistance. Armored columns nose north toward the Rhone, passing stone farmhouses where FFI guides wait, with sketches of crossroads and culverts. Captured ground expands in loping arcs. German rear guards fall back, rail lines are cut, and convoys drag across blown bridges under the heat of August. Toulon and Marseille loom as the real prizes. Street fighting scrapes through ports and dockyards, a day at a time, a block at a time. Veterans of naval landing parties remember the stink of bilge and cordite in warehouse shadows, the frantic hammer of machine pistols at 6 paces. By the last days of August, both ports are taken. Tugboats limp into channels strewn with scuttled hulls. Salvage crews clear obstructions, cranes creak, and the first cargoes roll ashore. Within weeks, these harbors will feed entire armies, an artery stronger and closer than any beach in Normandy. Prisoners come by the thousands, sunburned, stunned, pockets emptied into piles of watches, letters, field rations. Among them are boys and men pulled from fortress battalions and rear services, their faces telling the story of a campaign decided by tempo and surprise as much as firepower. Veterans recall the uneasy mix of pity and exhaustion, the sense that the war here is breaking open. The drive north accelerates. Columns chase the retreat along the river, bridging on the fly, refueling from drums stacked like short walls. The map compresses, provincial names sliding under the treads toward the interior. By early September, the Southern armies are linking hands with forces pushing east from Normandy. The ledger closes on Provence with ground gained, ports opened, and a corridor carved for the long thrust into the heart of occupied Europe. The reckoning is clear. The Second D-Day has done its job, and the road ahead now runs north.